read? Yes. Can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Belfiore?
Here.
Mr. Bianco?
Here.
Mr. DeGiulio?
Here.
Mr. Ludston?
Here.
Mrs. Coletti? Here. Mr. Radisaitis?
Here. Quorum has been established. We'll go right into number 3, public hearing adoption of the 2017-18 budget.
Illinois local law requires that a public hearing be held prior to the adoption of the district's budget. The public hearing gives interested individuals an opportunity to make public comments concerning the budget. The public hearing is not a dialogue or question and answer session between the board and the audience. It is a time when the public can present information and express opinions. The board's role is to listen intently to all comments presented to the public and then consider those comments when the board deliberates on the adoption of the budget.
Thank you. Dr. Schiller. Yes.
This is basically an updated presentation from the one that was done at the when the tentative budget was adopted a little bit over a month ago. Basically, when we talk about revenue updates, for those of you that haven't read the papers or haven't seen, Illinois passed its first major overhaul of its state aid formula for schools. It's called an evidence-based model. It basically has 27 variables now. So I was telling board members before that I used to be able to teach teachers how we fund schools. Now I can't because there's too many variables. The average person would have a very hard time figuring it out. But basically what the evidence-based model does is it tries to funnel revenue into those schools that are either and or property tax poor and or have higher concentrations of what we call protected groups such as low income, PLL, etc. And I'm going to show at the end of this how that, and so for example, if I go back, and I'm just going to flip all the way to the end here real quick. So for example, when the governor and everybody and the legislature agreed to put this new money out there, they decided to put $350 million of new money for schools out there. And of course, we're all hoping here at Norridge that that was going to help our school district a lot. But we run about 30-some% right in here low-income students. And basically, 85% of the money, until there's an adequate formula, is going to go on this side of the formula. So overall, out of that $350 million, we're in the group that isn't going to get as much money. So that's just something we all need to be aware of, because the way they did this formula, they actually computed what they thought was adequate for every student in every district. And until they get there, 85% of all the new dollars will go to that top 50% low income. So we're probably not going to see any of that money for a long time, even though we are technically inadequately funded by the state also. So that's an important change. Now the good part is that we'll get our money this year, because in past years we've been so far in debt that we haven't gotten some of our money for some of our needy students in special ed and so forth. So we'll at least get all that money this year. So that's the good thing. The other areas of revenue that were impacted in this budget, were something called corporate personal property tax. Back in the 70s, everybody paid a personal property tax. It was first taken off individuals, then it was taken off companies, but you know, districts needed the money, so they did a replacement tax. This year, that went down almost 30% for every district. In our case, we don't have a lot, so it represented maybe about $30,000. Categorical payments, one of the things that they did when they redid their new state aid formulas, they took all the money and put it basically in a pot and are distributing it based on wealth and needs. So we used to get these things called categorical. So every time we had high-cost special ed student, we'd get money for that. Every time we had a special ed teacher, we'd get money for that. Every time we had a bilingual student, we got money for that. They've taken all that money that they doled out individually in grants, reimbursements back to all the school districts and put it in one big formula. So now we get a lump sum for all of that. About the only thing that isn't in there is money for reimbursement for children who need to go to a private facility for which we can't provide an appropriate education. And that's based on educational plan. There was no property tax raise as it stands now. There was no really big change in the way we pay pensions per se, other than Chicago gets theirs picked up. The last three, Medicaid, Title II, those two are both federal grants, and they're basically still in limbo because federal government operates on a different fiscal year than we do, so we're still waiting to see. There were major cuts proposed to each of those programs. And then, of course, all of you, if you've got kids attending school here, you know that the fees were raised, okay? And those were the major revenue changes. On the expenditure side, we basically implemented the first year of a deficit reduction plan, which was $750,000, which resulted in grade centers. We did maintain full-day kindergarten. We maintained art, music, PE, and all the things that we said we would do if we went to grade centers. Obviously, the school fees are also reflected there, and any lane changes because of teachers getting additional educational attainment. This is the same chart that I showed before that just kind of accounts for all the reductions that were made during this past year. It totaled up to $750,000. This is just an updated projection per se. The magic, I'm going to go to the next one because it shows it a little bit better. But this is the deficit budget summary information that's reported to the state of Illinois. And we've been doing this every year. And the key pieces are, that you'll notice over here, is on the far right, you'll notice that we have about $1.5 million. On the far left, you'll notice that the education fund is about $500,000 in the deficit, red number. So basically, we've actually done well because our 470 number used to be $1.2 million. So we've reduced the deficit by the 750 we set. But we have to get rid of that 470 or 500, whatever we need to do for next year, for the year after, because if we don't, you can do the math. You take another 500 out of 4, okay, and you take another, in 3 years, it's gone. But that's 2 or 3 years more than we originally thought we were going to have, okay? So the district has done really well. If you looked here, you saw that down at the bottom, you see that line going below 0. It hit below 0 in 2019. You probably actually hit 0 somewhere between 2018 and 19. And now we're not going to hit 0, okay? So we're trying to straighten the ship a little bit and try and maintain an even keel for our educational programs. So the biggest challenges right now is basically the education fund is out of money. That's where we pay everybody. The teachers, that's where all the programs are. We're running as lean a ship as we can in the operation and maintenance, obviously, and all the other funds for which we have money for transportation, for special ed, etc. Our life safety fund only has $53,000 left. So you can imagine what would happen if a boiler repair came for $100,000, and we only have 53, and we can't take it out of the engine. What will happen is it will come out at 1.4 million. So that 1.4 million is kind of a precarious number to a certain degree because it's all that's left. And then our deficit reduction plan. We've done basically everything we said we would do. Tried the referendum twice. We did phase 1, $750,000. It's implemented, and it was like, in some ways, a magic pill this year because there's no reduction in art or music, our full-day kindergarten, all those things We were able to save because we moved to grade centers. We were able to save most of the money, and with consolidating extracurricular activities, that was saving half of that and so forth. Unfortunately, as I tried to explain at the very beginning, the state of Illinois funding reform is not a help to Norridge unless they fund it. Does their formula say that we have an inadequate amount of money? The answer is yes. But somebody has to come up with the money. If they come up with it, then it will help us. But right now it's not helping us because the money's going to go to fund the other schools that have higher concentrations of needy students before we get our money. And then we need to do phase 2. Because you saw the $400,000 deficit, we need to basically balance the budget in the following year, and that's going to require some work. There are some areas, obviously, that are not teacher impacted, but for the large part, everything we looked at last year are all the things that will probably be on the table again to one degree or the other. Obviously, the number isn't necessarily as big depending on how much we want to chew off, but we need to at least get to a balance point. And if it's 470,000, then when we're looking at those deficits, we also have to remember that we have contracts in place and other things, so it may be higher down the road. But that's where we're trying to go. Okay, at this point, unless something happens out of the ordinary. Questions?
Actually, I just have one. Just to reiterate, on the original budget from last year for 2016-17, we were estimating that we would receive $10,942,469, and so far, based on the numbers that you had on your slide, it was $10,279,861. So, which in essence is about $500,000, right? More than that. There's a big difference that the state did not give us.
Right.
So and there's nothing that we can do about that except for just wait.
Right. I mean, some of it is the lack of funding from the state. Some was estimates that we didn't get from the federal government. We still have the opportunity to get at least 2 payments. We're owed 2 more payments from last year. We got 2. In 16-17, we got 2 payments from 15 and 2 payments from 16 and 2 from 17. So they owe us half a year's worth of categoricals, which hopefully is a couple $100,000 or plus.
Thank you.
I got one quick question though too. There's a couple of new things that have gone up here. And people have been talking about we should receive the revenues for like the theater and the ale house and the new bank going up across the street, the revenues, the property taxes. How do we find out when we start receiving that? The monies for that?
It has to be completed on the books to be 100% or even a partial by December 31st. Were these all completed by December? Are they anticipated to all be on the books and completed by December 31st of this year?
No, well, one of them is, but I have no idea about the other ones.
That's the key. That's the key date. Sometimes they, so we can try and find that out. But the way to find out how much that would be is you just look for something similar. So, for example, if they're building a new little bank, is that what it is?
Yeah, there's a bank going up. And somebody
Okay.
said, I mean, how much could it be from a Jiffy Lube to a bank? I mean, the property tax is about the same, right?
Yeah, it's not.
You're not talking anything in difference. So we're not gaining anything.
No, you wouldn't unless it's going to be valued differently. Like if it went from a bank to retail, then they're going to base it on retail sales. So it actually may go down or may go up. That's just the way they do it on how much you make per square foot. But if you have other office spaces, all you can do is you can probably get from the village the permit, which would give you the square feet of let's say an office building, like 200,000 square feet. Then you just look for another office building of 200,000 square feet and at least give you an idea what it's going to be.